Hello students, today's topic is how do interest rates affect household savings? Let's start. Consider the decision facing Sam, a worker planning for retirement. Let's divide Sam's life into two periods. In the first period, Sam is young and working. In the second period, he is old and retired. So basically, we have divided the Sam's life into two periods. In the first period, Sam is young and working, and in the second period, he is old and retired. When young, Sam earns $100,000. He divides this income between current consumption and savings. And when he is old, Sam will consume what he has saved, including the interest that his savings have earned. So basically, जब Sam young है, at that time he works and he earns $100,000. He divides this $100,000 between the current consumption when he was young and savings. Okay. Now, when Sam is old, that means we are talking about the second period. When he is old, definitely uh, he will consume what he has saved. Okay. इंक्लूडिंग द इंटरेस्ट दैट इज सेविंग्स हैव अर्नड. अब उसने जो भी सेव किया उसके ऊपर उसे कोई ना कोई इंटरेस्ट भी मिला होगा, राइट? तो सेविंग्स प्लस इंटरेस्ट ये अब उसके पास है when he is old and he will consume that only. Okay. Suppose that the interest rate on savings is 10%. मान लेते हैं कि जो सेविंग्स के ऊपर इंटरेस्ट रेट है वो कितना है, 10% है. ये हमने एज्यूम किया है. Then for every dollar that Sam saves when young, he can consume $1.10 when old. ये भी बहुत सिंपल सी बात है that savings when young. तो जस्ट मैं यहाँ पे अगर एज्यूम कर रहा हूँ कि अगर $1 की यहाँ पे सेविंग की है, देन कंजम्पशन when old $1 plus 10% of $1, right? This is the interest rate on this savings. So $1 plus 0.1 of $1. Final answer will be $1.10. तो ये यहाँ पे कहना चाह रहा है. ठीक है. We can view consumption when young and consumption when old as the two goods that Sam must choose between. तो अब जो भी हम डायग्राम देखेंगे यहाँ पर, वहाँ पे हम बेसिकली जो दो गुड्स हम एज्यूम कर रहे हैं वो क्या है. फर्स्ट गुड इज दिस इज गुड 1. दिस इज गुड 1. And if we talk about this one, consumption when old, this is good 2. Okay, so we can view the consumption when young as good 1 and consumption when old as good 2, as the two goods that the Sam must choose between. This is the vertical axis, horizontal axis. This is origin. On the vertical axis we have taken consumption when old, and on the horizontal axis we have taken consumption when young. Now let's talk about this coordinate, $100,000. It indicates that Sam saves nothing. Sam saves nothing. That means he has consumed all his earnings of $100,000 when he was young, and he will consume nothing when old. Okay, now let's talk about this coordinate, this one. What does it indicates? It indicates that Sam saves everything. When I'm saying that Sam saves everything, what does it indicate? It indicates that consumes consumes nothing, consumes nothing when young, because he has saved everything. And when he saves everything, then his consumptions when old will be $110,000. And we can calculate this as follows: $100,000 plus, because he has saved this entire earnings, so plus 10%. We have assumed that interest rate on savings is 10%, so plus 10% of $100,000, which will be $110,000. So in this way you can calculate this amount of consumption when old, when he has saved everything. That means consumes nothing when young. Okay, now let's join these two coordinates. So this is the budget constraint. Now let's use indifference curves to represent Sam's preferences for consumption in the two periods. This is I1, I2, I3. We know that if we talk about the optimum will be achieved at this point, because at this point the budget constraint is tangent to the highest possible indifference curve. That means this one. This is optimum. At this optimum, Sam consumes $50,000 when he was young and $55,000 when old. Now consider what happens when the interest rate increases from 10% to 20%. So let's suppose that this is budget constraint 1. Okay. Now when the interest rate has increased from 10% to 20%, the budget constraint will look like this. This is the new budget constraint BC2. So basically the budget constraint will shift outward and become steeper. At the new higher interest rate, Sam gets more consumption when old for every dollar of consumption that he gives up when young. अब basically अगर मैं कहूँ कि for example, if this coordinate was $100,000 and this was earlier $110,000, ये क्या डिनोट कर रहा था? जब इंटरेस्ट रेट था 10%, ठीक है, सेविंग्स का इंटरेस्ट रेट था 10%. Now when the interest rate has been increased from 10% to 20%, now if he saves everything and consumes nothing when young, then what will be his consumption when old, when the interest rate on saving is 20%? We can calculate it. Dollar 100,000 plus 20% of dollar 100,000, right? So this will be dollar 120,000. So this coordinate can be written as dollar 120,000. तो ये वो कहना चाह रहा है यहाँ पे that at this new higher interest rate, Sam will get more consumption when old for every dollar of consumption that he gives up when young. Clear? Now let's first see the substitution effect. When the interest rate rises, consumption when old becomes less costly relative to consumption when young. Or we can also say this statement as that when interest rate rises, consumption when young becomes more costly as compared to consumption when old. Okay. Therefore, the substitution effect induces Sam to consume more when old and less when young. Because अब interest rate क्या हो गया हमारा? Interest rate has been increased, and that is a reason substitution effect induces Sam to consume less when young and to consume more when old. So he will save more when young. In other words, the substitution effect induces Sam to save more. Okay. Now let's see the income effect. When interest rate rises, Sam moves to a higher indifference curve, so he is now better off than he was. As long as consumption in both the periods consists of normal goods, he tends to want to use this increase in well-being to enjoy higher consumption in both the periods. And that is the reason income effect induces Sam to save less. तो आप समझ गए यहाँ पर जब इंटरेस्ट रेट इंक्रीज हो रहा है सो बेसिकली इट मीन्स दैट देयर इज एन इंक्रीज इन well-being. Okay, so Sam will move to a higher indifference curve. Now if we are considering consumption in both the periods as normal goods, then Sam will want to use this increase in well-being to enjoy his higher consumption in both the periods, and that is the reason income effect induces Sam to save less when young, because he wants to increase in consumption in both the periods. So income effect induces Sam to save less. Now let's see this case that when substitution effect is greater than the income effect. Okay, we know that if we talk about substitution effect says induces Sam to save more when young, and income effect says save less when young. Fine. In this case, substitution effect is greater than income effect. So the final result will be save more when young, or we can say that what this will imply, consume less when young, consume more when old. Okay, so this is the initial situation, initial indifference curve I1. This is the consumption. तो ये इनिशियल सिचुएशन है हमारी. अब अगर सब्स्टिट्यूशन इफेक्ट is greater than the income effect, then we will draw this indifference curve I2. So as you can see that consume less when young and consume more when old. यहाँ पे मैं इसको ऐसे भी लिख सकता हूँ, save less when young. Sorry, I think I should write it as save more when young. Now let's see the other case when income effect dominates the substitution effect. In this case, consumption in both the periods will be increased. So this is the initial situation that we are depicting. This will be the new indifference curve I2. This is the new optimal point. And as you can see in the figure that consumption in both the periods is increased. Consumption in both the periods has been increased because income effect dominates the substitution effect. Income effect says that there will be an increase in well-being when interest rate rises, so there will be an increase in well-being, and because we are considering consumption in both periods as normal goods, so that is a reason consumption in both periods will be increased. ये कहता है इनकम इफेक्ट. ओके, ये इनकम इफेक्ट की एक्सप्लेनेशन थी जो अभी हमने रीड करी थी, और इस केस में इनकम इफेक्ट डोमिनेट कर रहा है सब्स्टिट्यूशन इफेक्ट को, एंड दैट इज अ रीजन कंजम्पशन इन बोथ द पीरियड्स हैज बीन इंक्रीज्ड. अगर मैं कंक्लूड करूं अब इसे, एक केस हमारे सामने था दैट substitution effect dominates the income effect, right? एक केस हमारे सामने था income effect dominates the substitution effect. One conclusion is common for both the cases, that is consumption when old will be increased. Okay, but in this case consumption when young is decreased because substitution effect dominates the income effect, and in this case consumption when young will be increased because income effect dominates the substitution effect. Clear? Thus the theory of consumer choice says that an increase in interest rate could either encourage or discourage savings. ओके अगर तो encourage कर रहा है सेविंग को, अगर मैं इस केस की बात करूं यहां पर, इस केस में मैं कहूंगा encourage सेविंग, और ये केस है discourage saving. Okay. That's all from my side. Thank you. अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छी लगी, कंसेप्ट अच्छे से समझ में आया, तो प्लीज़ इस वीडियो को शेयर करें अपने फ्रेंड्स के साथ